I'll see you guys in the dark.
I used to live at a small farm in the U.S. growing up. But as soon as I was 18, I moved out instantly. And I'll tell you why. When I was 12, me and my best friend Zach, who happened to live down the road at the time, used to go into the woods to play. Since we lived in the country, there was almost nothing to do. We would always explore and pretend to be treasure hunters. I always used to take my dad's old cowboy hat, and Zach would take a small shovel every day. But if it was a bad day, we would just play some games on my Nintendo 64. Yeah, this happened when I was like 13 years old, so it was the best that you could get. We would always go a bit deeper into the forest every time we went in. We usually managed to find something interesting in the woods, like old coins, water bottles, some nice looking stones, and some other things. Yeah, I know, really lame stuff, but we were kids at the time, and we always thought of it as treasure. I had a small box under my bed to put things in that I found, and so did Zach. We had an awesome childhood, but some creepy shit started happening over some time. One day, while we were exploring the forest again, we came across a well. We got really excited, thinking we actually found something good. We checked it out, but there was nothing special, and the well was dry. We pretty much got our hopes up for nothing. We headed back home, and another day was over. The next day was a Friday. And when we got back home from school, Zach went back to his house. I went back to mine. Not long after having lunch, Zach was at the door. I grabbed my dad's hat and opened up the door. When I opened it, Zach was there with two other boys. They were much bigger than me and Zach. Zach introduced them as his cousins, saying that they were staying with his mom and dad for the weekend. Their names were Danny and Simon. They were both 15 years old, 3 years older than me and Zach. They wanted to come with me and Zach into the woods. I agreed, so we went there. It was just a normal day for the most part, but Zach's cousins were total assholes, saying that it sucked being in the woods, and asking us how we never got bored out here. Later that night, around 11 at night, I got knocks at my bedroom window. It was Zach and his cousins. They told me to come down. I managed to get downstairs without awakening my parents. I opened the door, and the cousin asked me if I wanted to go to the woods. I had never been out there at night before, and to be honest, I really didn't want to go. And I told them that. Then they said, "Your loss." They went off in the direction of the tree line. I changed my mind, grabbed my dad's hat, and ran after them. I caught up to them, and we started walking deeper into the woods. I was scared shitless, and by the look on Zach's face, he was scared as well. The cousins stayed in front, shining their flashlights on the spooky trees. I noticed we were going in the direction of the well. I know the place like the back of my hand, so I had a plan in case shit hit the fan. We were coming up on the well. Suddenly, the cousins stopped and turned off their flashlights. We asked them what was wrong. They stood still like statues. When we went around them, since we stayed behind them, I froze as well. There was a person standing in front of the well, not looking in our direction, thankfully. I stood there like a statue, not knowing what to do. Then one of the cousins, I think it was Simon, whispered, "Turn around slowly and walk away slowly. Don't make any sudden moves." I complied, and we all turned around, started walking back slowly, so that figure wouldn't notice us. Then the terrible happened. I stood on a stick by accident and made it snap. It was loud, and we weren't far enough away from that figure, so we all stopped again. I looked back, and the figure was now looking directly at us. I almost fainted with fear. Then Danny screamed, "Run!" We all floored it. I dropped my hat while running back, but I didn't stop to pick it up. I had no idea if the figure was following us, since all of our footsteps made it hard to make out. I didn't look back either, so I didn't know. We all managed to make it back safely. I ran into my house, slammed the door shut. My parents were awake, and I got shouted at by my parents, and I was grounded for a week. But they also looked really relieved. My mom hugged me and said that I'm glad that you're safe. I was confused and asked them why they were so worried about. Then they told me something that made me even more scared. They told me that recently an escaped killer was on the loose, and he was last spotted in our area. When my dad saw that I wasn't in my room, since he usually comes to check up on me, and the front door wasn't shut, they thought that I had been kidnapped, and they were about to call the police when I came through the door. After hearing that, I started crying. My parents asked me why. I told them what had happened. Their faces were full of horror. After telling them all of that, they called the police immediately. Later on, they arrived. I explained everything to them, and they said that they would take a look into the woods. They did. Half an hour later, they came back with nothing, but they said that the next day they would bring more cops to search the area some more, and warned me not to go into the woods again. I obliged. I could barely sleep that night, because I was so afraid that the man would come for me. The next day, more cops came to our farm and started investigating the woods. They also went to Zach's house. My mom came in and said that she found my dad's hat on the doorstep. I remembered that last night I had dropped it. How did it get there? I thought about some more, and the man in the woods came to mind. I started panicking again. My parents calmed me down and asked me what was wrong. I told them about the hat. They had nervous looks on their faces. My dad took the hat to the cop outside. I managed to calm down again, and for the rest of the day, I played video games. Since my parents grounded me anyway. Around lunchtime, we got a knock at the door. I answered it. It was Zach and his mom. Zach's mom asked if she could talk to my parents. I told my parents that they were at the door. Then they told us to go into my room and go play something. I put my ear against the door and listened. Zach's mom told my parents that Danny wasn't in the house in the morning, and after hearing the news about that creep in the woods, she began to worry. One thing didn't make sense, though. All four of us made it out safely. I was confused. Then Zach told me something that scared the living shit out of me. He said Danny had left the house when they got back. He left while Simon and Zach were sleeping, although Zach wasn't sleeping. Zach said that he looked out the window and saw him walk into the woods. He wanted to stop him, but he said that he was scared to go out there again. He never came back. I asked him why he left. Zach didn't know. Then Simon came over to hang out later on. I asked him if he knew why Danny had left the house. He said he had an idea. Danny always used to carry around his dead mother's ring with him, since his mom had died a year prior to the events of the story. He always used to keep it in a box, and he would take it wherever he would go, and Simon checked the box in the morning, and it was empty. He must have dropped it while we were running from the guy last night. After that day, as weeks went by, the guy in the woods was never caught. The cops started an investigation on Danny's disappearance. He was also never found, and me and Zach never went back into the woods again. Once we reached 18, we bought a house between each other and became roommates. Nothing's better than having a roommate as your best friend. I'm 25 years old now. I live with my girlfriend, and I still hang out with Zach. But even after all that time, I still think about that night every day, and I probably will for the rest of my life. This is the first time that I have told anyone this story. It may not be dramatic or scary to some people, but I just wanted to share this experience anyways. I got a job at a hotel downtown from where I live. I have never worked in the hotel industry before, so I had no idea what to expect. The time between applying for the job and being hired was less than 24 hours, which made me pretty nervous. But I had been looking for several months, and I couldn't find anything, so I thought that I would just take a chance. This hotel is about 150 years old, has plenty of character. Behind the front desk, there are places where the wallpaper has torn away, revealing a psychedelic wallpaper from what I can only guess to be the 70s. We're talking bright pink, neon green, hookah-induced vision type of wallpaper. The walls in the upper floors are painted bright orange and yellow, and the hallways are narrow enough to give you a shining kind of feel, but I'll elaborate on that later. The manager is a young Chinese man in his mid-20s, only 5 years older than me. The man who owns the building is also Chinese, and literally a walking stereotype. The owner is friendly and kind to all the employees, but he's also rich enough that he doesn't have to really care if the hotel isn't up to par. I also had that idea that he may have one of those run-down shopping centers downtown, so this might explain the less than 5-star quality of the hotel. Probably about a 3.5 star, in my opinion. Some people describe the place as quaint, unique, full of character, while others describe it as outdated or disappointing. As a history enthusiast, I would agree that the place is full of character, but I also think the owners should be a little more concerned about keeping the place clean. There are a lot of problems in this hotel, including mice, broken toilets, falling ceiling tiles, leaks, and other maintenance nightmares. The fancier rooms on the upper floors have real fireplaces in them, so that adds to the risk of fires at the hands of careless guests. Mice are a common problem here, and I'm thankful that the guests don't have to see all the dusty traps filled with dead rodents in the basement. But by far, the most interesting aspect of the hotel is that it's supposed to be haunted. There's 2 ghosts that have been reported in the building, as well as the adjoining pub next door. But then the hotel was first built. It was the reputation of being a complete dive. A lady now named Lady Churchill died in the hotel, and her spirit supposedly lingers in the haunted room 49. Guests will occasionally smell her perfume, or see her face in the mirror. One of the most frightening stories includes someone opening up the door only to have Lady Churchill fly at them in fury. On my first day, when the boss toured me around the hotel, he pointed out the haunted room to me. Lady Churchill has also been spotted at the fireplace in the pub, arguing with her boyfriend, the other resident ghost, Brady. Brady was stabbed to death on a basement stairwell. That stairwell is not in use anymore, as it leads from the street directly into the basement. Instead, it's used to store extra chairs and miscellaneous items. The light is never turned on, which adds more of a creep factor. My shift is during the day, from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Every morning when I come in, I have to check the entire hotel by myself, in search of homeless people sleeping in the back stairwell, or trying to get in through the basement. I'm not an intimidating person. I'm a short female, not physically fit, and too friendly for my own good. If I find someone hiding in the hotel, what was I supposed to do about it? I'm not sure which creeps me out more. The fact that I'm going around looking for people who shouldn't be there, or the idea that I have to walk around through dark and silent areas known to be haunted all by myself. My sweep of the hotel includes all 4 floors of the guest rooms, the kitchen, the back stairwell, the basement stairwell, and the basement itself. To give you some context, the back stairwell serves as a fire escape connecting all the floors together. It goes straight down to the street level. It's also cold and echoey in there, and as I said before, full of dead mice. The 4 floors for guest rooms and all of their overlook hotel glory are shaped like a square horseshoe, which means more than enough blind corners where creepy twins might suddenly appear. Lady Churchill's haunted room is at the end of the hall, around one of those blind corners. And yes, I do think about this every time I search the hotel. There is an elevator and an interior stairwell, the one guests are supposed to use. Behind the elevator is this old connecting hallway that basically serves no purpose anymore. In the past, it may have been useful, but now it just serves as a secret passageway that goes behind the elevator and comes out the other end of the horseshoe. This hallway especially needs to be searched for homeless people, drunks, or people having sex. The basement by far is the creepiest part of the hotel. To get there, you can either take the elevator or go through the pub and down the stairs. I prefer to go through the pub because there are some fascinating black and white photos from when the hotel was first built, and I love to just look at them. It's also the best place to see the age of the brick foundation. Anyway, the basement is used for storing beer kegs, firewood, planter pots, housekeeping items, and maintenance tools, among other things. It's usually deserted. Now that I know the dark, unused basement stairwell is where Brady's spirit is supposed to be, I think I'll try to spend less time down there. This week is my 2nd week of work, and my boss has put me on the afternoon and evening shift, so I can get a sense of what it's like in case I have to cover anybody in the future. Yesterday was my first late night shift, and in that time I learned a whole bunch of things that I didn't want to know from the lady that I worked with. This woman, let's call her Peggy, has been at the hotel for 14 years. She's seen all there is to see, and is well known for her stories. I've listened to some of these stories, and honestly part of me thinks she's full of shit, but the other part is going to cautiously believe her, on the off chance that it happens to be true. There are some things that I've learned about the hotel in the span of my shift. The man I'm replacing was not actually fired for chronic lateness, as my boss happened to have told me, but instead for sexual harassment. The head of housekeeping, a man that I get along with very well, is a friend of his. The day before, Peggy caught a drug addict rooting around in the private back office after hours. We looked over the security footage, and he was definitely searching for something. We now keep the office doors locked. There's 2 guests several years ago who stayed at the hotel, and the next day they robbed a jewelry store downtown and fled back to the hotel with everything that they had stolen. There was a massive police standoff on the roof, SWAT teams and all. There's a news article about it online. Otherwise, I never would have believed it. The bedrock of the hotel can be found in the boiler room. There's a slight gap that can be filled in on the top right corner that connects directly to the street. One time, Peggy came down to the boiler room to find a man half through the gap, head first, trying to get in because he wanted to know what was down there. That image terrifies me. In the span of that one night shift, an alarm went off in the basement. The police showed up at the pub, and a guest verbally abused the day staff over a non-existent shuttle to the hospital. No, not an ambulance, but a shuttle. Taking the bus was beneath them, I suppose. And at my bus stop, after my shift, a man was shooting up in public. My city happens to have a drug epidemic going on right now. The bus took half an hour to arrive. When I got off my stop, it was as foggy as Silent Hill. I felt as though I should be looking around for Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. It happens to be October after all. That's one night shift down. I have another tonight and one more the day after. It's amazing how different the hotel is after 3 p.m. Much louder, that's for sure. Thanks to the pub on the other side, and the bar on the other. Everyone that I've gotten to know during my first week of work has already gone home, leaving me with some drunks, strangers, and Peggy's crazy stories. One thing's for sure, after 3 nights of this, I'll never complain about getting up early ever again. Trigger warning, my story includes details of rape. This is something that I've never told anyone I know. I've shared a lot of it with my boyfriend, but he can't exactly handle hearing the full story. It makes him so sick and angry for me. I told a therapist, but she told me that I was lying, only because she knew the person that was involved. I would like to be referred to as anonymous due to the sensitivity, and the person involved still being free. My sister and I, well, we're very close. Our father was very physically abusive, and we lived alone with him for 13 years. So once we finally were free from him, we ended up staying very close. I lived with my mom, and she lived with her husband, but I'd frequently stay at their house for about 6 years as I started staying when I was 10. I guess I should say that my sister is 10 years older than me, and her husband is 12 years older than me. Once I started getting older, probably about 14, along with our usual playing video games and watching movies, we started smoking weed together on my visits. It was so fun, and I loved hanging out with them. One day, when I was about to turn 16, I noticed her husband started acting strange towards me. I kind of shrugged it off as me just being paranoid because of trust issues with men due to my past. As time went on, I knew that it wasn't just me. He would text me very sexually inappropriate questions, asking if I had sex yet, and hinting that if I were to get a boyfriend, he would be very jealous. This worried me a lot, so I told my mom and showed her the texts. She told me he was just playing, and he didn't mean anything by it. It was very frustrating because I knew deep down in my gut this behavior was unacceptable. But my mom was a smart woman, and I found usually she was right about things, so I just put it into the back of my mind. He would occasionally text me weird things after that, mainly just calling me cute or something subtle, and I would just pretend that I didn't notice. I did, however, show my cousin some of the messages when we were at the family Christmas, and then she said that I didn't want to say anything, but he looks at you very strangely. It gives me the shivers. I felt relieved in a sense, because now I knew someone else believed me. I readdressed the issue to my mom, and she reassured me that we were just overreacting, so I decided to give it a rest. Fast forward about 6 months. I'm 16, and it's summer break, so I go to my sister's house as usual because the weird behavior calmed down a lot. We played video games and got high all night without incident. I went to bed and slept about 10 hours. It was around 10 a.m., and I couldn't sleep anymore. My sister, her husband, and their roommate were all asleep still, so I decided to watch some TV. About 10 minutes after turning on the TV, I hear someone coming downstairs, and her husband comes and sits on the other couch. Says, "Good morning. What are you watching?" I'm like, "Oh, I just turned on the first thing. I'm not really sure. It was some weird little cartoon show." He laughed awkwardly and looked over at my shirt that had Invader Zim on it and said while walking across the room to the couch that I was on. He said that I loved that shirt. It's cute. And started loading a bowl into the bong. I felt extremely uncomfortable and said thank you. He then kept messing with the bong, and I tried to act very interested in the show as he handed it to me to hit it. I hit it, and it tasted a little funny, but the bong was pretty dirty. I sat and watched the show for a little while more. Then I started to feel pretty drowsy. He was watching me and said, "This show is silly, just like you. You're really silly." And he started forcibly kissing me. I was very shocked and scared. I tried to pull away. Then I realized that I couldn't move or make a noise of any sort. I was heavy, and all I could do was look in horror as he forced himself on me and stripped me. I just kept thinking that my sister was upstairs. How is this happening? I remember it hurting so bad, and him whispering how much he had dreamed of doing this since he first met me. He first met me when I was 9 years old. I just felt pain, tears running down my face, and absolute horror. All of a sudden, there's creaking at the top of the steps, and he hurried and put my shorts on, my now dead body weight, and went onto the other couch. It was their roommate. He looked at me and didn't say anything, but by the look in his eyes and the way that he looked at my sister's husband, he knew. Next thing I know, I'm waking up to my sister saying that it's 2 p.m. Are you ready to go home? I couldn't talk. All I could muster was a very confused, dazed nod, and it all went black again. I had horrible nightmares and a seemingly endless sleep, and woke up again to my sister saying, "Come on, it's 9 p.m. Mom's pissed that you haven't got home." I was so dazed still. I couldn't remember much. I couldn't form sentences, but I knew what happened. He was still there in the room holding her on the couch across from me after raping me, not even 12 hours before. I know I should have said something, but I was in such a fog, I barely walked myself to the car. I don't remember anything between sitting in the car and waking up at 9 a.m. the next morning to my mom very pissed that I was sleeping so much, and telling me that I had to do chores, and that she was leaving for work. I stayed in a fog, not feeling right for days, and didn't say a word. I didn't tell anyone until a month later when I confessed to my mom what happened. She called my sister, to which she said, "I know they had sex. We're in an open relationship," and she told him that she wanted it. "If you try and press charges, I will kill myself." Considering the past with attempts from her, my mom believed this, and told her okay, but I don't ever want him near our family again, and told me it had been taken care of. I was hurt. No one did anything about it. Sure, I never had to see him again, but 5 years later, my sister, who was once my best friend, is still married to him, and he has never once had any consequences for his actions. I didn't put all the pieces together until about 2 years ago. I chalked up the passing out and grogginess for days as an effort from trauma, but now I realize that he never smoked out of that bowl. I got date raped by the man that I considered a brother, with my sister right upstairs. The worst part is, I thought of him as a brother, and he has a sister the exact same age as me, and I have to wonder if I'm his first or last victim. The day that I graduated 8th grade, on the same day that my dad came to pick me up. We leave to the city as my parents are divorced and live on the opposite side of the country. I'm a 15-year-old male, just for some reference. So we went on our way to get to the road and drove away. We got to the city, went to my father's office, and stayed there for a while. After about 2 hours, we went home. He lives about 15 minutes from the actual city, in a small village. There's probably about 1,000 people, so everyone knows each other. When we get there, I settled into my old room. I have a few knives and a few airsoft guns, but the main weapon was my dad's old shotgun. I was pretty protected. I do get anxious sometimes during the night. I get paranoid really easily. I stayed up late, as I do normally. I was on my PC and playing some League, so I got pretty thirsty. I got up out of the chair, went to go get some water. I had to go up the stairs because it's a 3-story house with a big backyard and a pool My dad said that I could use the bathroom on the 3rd floor because there was no one on that floor, so I had to go use the 3rd floor one. I went on my way, I turned on the lights, and started walking up the stairs. The problem with the upper floor is that my cousin's mother died from cancer in the bedroom. Quite often I hear sounds from down and up the stairs. So I went up there. I saw that the door of the room was wide open. It's a pretty heavy door, so it can be heard from far away, but usually it's locked. The door was smashed. I got pretty paranoid. I sprinted down the stairs to go get my gun and a flashlight. I went to go get them. Suddenly, when I turned around, the door was shut. I didn't close it. I got really paranoid. Started to listen closely so that if it was a burglar, I could hear them. Then the power went off. All the lights in my room went off. My PC had shut down. I got scared. I jumped. I remembered to keep calm so that I can turn on the flashlight. I loaded the gun and pointed it at the door. I waited for what I thought was like an hour. I looked at my watch. Only 20 seconds had passed away. I started to slowly go to the door. I opened it and heard a sound behind me. I pointed the gun behind me. The door is still wide open. I heard a strange laugh, like a cheap movie villain. I got really scared, and then the power came back on. The next day, I told everything to my dad. He said that I was lying. I didn't want to tell him anything anymore. The night after I tried to forget what happened, I went upstairs again, checked the door with an airsoft pistol. I didn't want to carry a loaded gun around, so I just got that. It was locked, so I moved on. I went into the bathroom, got me some water. I drank it pretty fast. I pointed the gun at the door. I really don't know why, but I did it anyhow. I was sure that the power is on because I checked it this morning. I got back into my room, locked the door, and went to my PC. I sat down, had the pistol right next to me just in case I needed it, so I was ready. I started up and was ready to start playing ranked with some friends. Thought that it was just a coincidence. I tried to forget about it. I was in the middle of the game and I heard a noise. I got the gun, just stared at the door. Then, as if nothing, I heard a noise like somebody was lighting a cigarette with a plastic lighter. I went to go check the door. It happened to have been closed. I said fuck that and continued playing. I wanted to stream some. I decided to start the stream. I got quite a few views. There's maybe like 200 people. Then I was looking in the chat and everybody started typing, "What the fuck? That's a cool trick, dude. Behind you. Get a gun." So I looked around. There happened to have been nothing. I got up and turned on the lights. Then the chat went wild, telling me that there was something right behind me. Suddenly the internet stopped. I was freaked out. I got my gun, then my guitar started playing by itself. I had it in its case, so it was absolutely impossible. Then I saw what looked like a lady in a wedding dress playing with my guitar, staring at me. It was as if she was looking directly into my soul. I aimed my gun at the thing, then suddenly it disappeared. For the next few days, nothing has happened. But something happened to have scared me the other day. After I calmed down, I just tried to forget about it. I got up on Facebook and searched for some weed because I was out. So I messaged a few people in my area, found a guy that got a strong kilo. I got my money and a knife, went on my way about it. It was probably around 10 p.m. at the time. So I got the weed, headed back home. It wasn't shady at all, and I was pretty happy. So I got back home and rolled me a joint. I started up Twitch and burned one down. I started streaming. I really felt like it was pretty hard. So I just got some music, started playing after like 2 or 3 games. I suddenly heard something. My internet had stopped. I got up and got my gun loaded. Started walking to the door. Then I heard footsteps. I locked the door, got out the key, and started looking at the keyhole. I happened to see a dark figure. Nothing like last time. I just saw 2 glowing eyes looking at me. I was scared shitless. Walked back while aiming at the door. I lit up a cigarette and just stayed there thinking that it's just the weed. So I called up a friend in the area and asked him to get a gun, come over to sleep over at my house. I told him that I happened to have some weed. So he happened to be game. He got his laptop and was on his way. I got up, put out my cigarette. I grabbed my gun and unlocked the door. I started walking slowly downstairs. I didn't see anything. I turned on all the lights. My dad happened to not be home at this time, so I was pretty much free to do anything that I wanted. I heard nothing, so I went on. I saw my friend entering the front door, and he shouted, "Hey, my nigga! What's up, Sonny?" I replied, "Hey, what's up, Johnny?" His name is not John, just for reference. We locked the door and got to my room. We decided to get high as hell. Just watched funny shit on his laptop. The next morning I saw something very weird. My internet cable happened to have been cut. I was shocked. My friend didn't get up, so I just made us some coffee, some breakfast. It was done. I left it upstairs. I decided to go walk upstairs to wake him up. He went to go try to find a change of underwear. He couldn't find any since he was going to be there for a few days. He happened to have brought spare clothing. We walked downstairs to go get some coffee. Suddenly it wasn't there. The coffee that I made was missing. I was surprised. I decided that I was just going to make more. Thought that I forgot it somewhere. Didn't want to creep my friend out, so I just went to go make some more. The breakfast suddenly was missing as well. I blamed it on my cats. We decided to go to a gas station to go get some snacks and drinks because we wanted to get some munchies. We quickly walked up there and went back as soon as we got what we needed. We got back home. We saw the door wide open. We were scared shitless. We happened to lock every single room in the house. I tried to stay calm. My friend got his 9mm Glock. It isn't very powerful, but it can stop pretty much anyone. We walk in. It's pretty late. We're pretty nervous, so we searched the whole house. We found my friend's underwear under a mattress, including my dad's lube. I guess as he's single, so no judging. A huge knife and a photo of me. We were scared shitless. We locked the basement. Got what we needed from the kitchen. Locked everything in the house. Then we got in the shower, one at a time. One washed in the shower and one guarded with a double barrel. So we felt secure. We called my dad. He didn't pick up, as he wasn't in the country at the moment. So we just had to rely on each other. He happened to want something to drink, so he goes on. We locked our door and started watching all the windows. We heard something outside, so we decided to make a pact that if something happened, we would finish the job. So we got all our knives and our guns, the flashlights, and we were heading out. Watch out, this is a little bit graphic. So we went outside and found the thing of nightmares. We found an old, creepy as fuck rapist that I think he was with pale skin, a beer belly, a tank top, and khaki shorts. He happens to be drunk or something. I really don't know who he is. He's just staring at us. We shouted at him to get the fuck out of this private property. He ran to my old treehouse from when I was little that me and my dad had built. He started screaming at us that he will sleep there and that he is armed. We said that we are calling the cops if he doesn't get down and disarm himself, as he was outnumbered. He told us no, said that he would kill us. We knew that we can't surrender. I know that this sounds like bullshit, but trust me on this. It is all true, as my dad's property is really big. This has happened before, but we solved the problem without anyone getting harmed. We watched from the windows. He just stayed there and didn't get down. Suddenly at 3 a.m., he climbed down and went to the pool to drink some water, which is with chlorine, so it is quite dangerous if you drink a lot. He got naked. He happened to be really dirty and disgusting. He jumped in, and as he did, we sat there, already armed. We started going to the pool. It happens to have lights in it, so we turned them on. We scared the living shit out of him. He shouted to not get so close, as he didn't have any weapons. We were sure to engage him. I happened to have some recruit military training, as my dad was a general just a few years ago, so he wanted me to know some of the techniques so I could defend myself. The way I can handle drunk people, or whatever comes my way. He started splashing water everywhere. We decided to point the gun at him, of course. They weren't loaded, but we were sure that he is just drunk or maybe high on something pretty hard. So we just stood there. I was aiming at him while my friend called the cops. He jumps out of the pool, gets a shovel, and starts running at my friend. I quickly load the gun and shoot him right in the leg. He falls to the ground as the cops are coming. He starts singing a weird song, maybe like a 50s or 60s love song. Something as the police came. They searched everywhere. Good thing they didn't find the weed or the guns. We told them that we just stabbed him with a crowbar. The police decided to search the basement and the treehouse. What they found is truly disturbing. In the treehouse, they found a small image viewer and a proper projector, and that explains the weird hallucinations that I saw at the start of the story. So he was just next to my door, watching me. He projected this image to scare me. Other things that we found. There were a few bent spoons, all burnt from the bottom. Those happen to be some of the utensils that we have been missing. A few big bags of pure black tar heroin. As the police told us, that's what it was. And other hard drugs. Some money stolen from my piggy bank, as it was there as well. Some other things, as black garbage bags, rope, knives, duct tape, even fucking chloroform. Pure chloroform. This happened around an hour ago now. If my friend wasn't there, I really don't know what could have happened to me. This happened a few years back, a few states away. Ultimately, I was unharmed. However, the remains of the creepiest encounter that I have ever had. So I get off of work. I head to the bus stop. I'm waiting for the bus. And as I do, I make eye contact with a man crossing the street, going in the opposite direction. He turns back a few times to see me. I quickly lose attention as the bus came. I get on the bus, sit down, not thinking at all about this man. The next stop, the same man gets on. He's rummaging through his pockets and pulls out all the change to get on the bus. Also, immediately, I go into red alert. This man was going in the complete opposite direction, and it seems that he wasn't even preparing to get on the bus. Okay, things happen, and he's probably meant to, but not everything is about me, so I try to push it away. As he walks past me, we lock eyes, and my heart sinks. I make eye contact with the coldest eyes that I've ever seen. I'm inwardly freaking out, but nothing was actually happening, so I'm just trying to remain calm. As the bus ride continues and people get off, I turn around to see what he's doing. He's making direct eye contact with me, as if he has been watching me the entire time. He isn't looking outside the window. He's not on his phone. He is blankly and darkly staring at me. I decide the best course of action is to get off the bus before my usual one. Wait and see. I get off. And I turn around, and I just don't see him following me. I figured the trouble had passed. That is until I see him getting off the next, and walking very quickly towards where I am. I then double back and turn around. I'm not sure what to do. He hasn't done anything, or said anything, or even given me a reason to be afraid of him. But every alarm bell is sounding off in my head that something isn't right. At this point, I decide that whatever this is, I want no part in it, and I don't want to walk home because it could mean that he either A, knows where I live, or B, has the opportunity to have me alone. I decide to head to a quick market, a little convenience store not too far off, and as I do, he approaches me. Hey, shorty. He makes it as if he is going to show me something. I turn quickly and begin calling 911, and as I'm describing what's going on, I am clearly distressed. I was crying, and I was trying to evade him and calling the police. Once he sees me calling the police, he backs away, far enough that I initially think that he left completely. When I peek my head out of the store, I see him, pacing and waiting for me, still making eye contact. I felt like a trapped animal about to be slaughtered. Other people start noticing, both me crying and him pacing outside waiting for me. A woman asked me if I was okay, and noticed this man was stalking me. He moved further away, out of sight, hiding behind a bus bench so that I couldn't see him. But he was still there, like a predator, pacing, watching, pacing, and watching. Anyways, eventually the police came, stopped him, and they took his information down. But since he didn't actually do anything, they couldn't arrest him. I went home and sobbed. While nothing happened, and I'm still not sure what he wanted to say or show me, I have no doubt that it was with ill intention. It's taken me a while to process it, but I'm so happy that I listened to my instinct. I was the average teenage cheerleader in high school, and you know how high school is. I went to a party, and all 180 of us decided we would play the spin the bottle. The rules are simple. If the bottle lands on you, you have to kiss the person in the closet. One kid spud the bottle, and it landed on me. I went in the closet hesitantly and went to the closet. Something made my contacts pop out. The person was ready for me to kiss them, so I just closed my eyes and kissed him. The problem was that the person said I wasn't kissing them. I glanced into the darkness, not able to see a thing, and saw a black figure. I let out a scream as it pulled me deeper into the closet. I held on for dear life, and the kid that I forgot was in the closet scratched the thing, made it let me go. I pulled out my spare glasses that I kept just in case, and we went out to tell everyone the story. The owner of the house said that the closet was not deeper. I got chills on that. I told them since I didn't kiss the kid in the closet, I would kiss the kid in front of everyone. The kid was so happy, and I was just relieved to be alive. The next few days, everyone teased me about liking a non-popular, but I just brushed them all off. One night in November of 2017, when I was 20 years old, my mom and I went grocery shopping. While standing in the bakery section, my mom and I ran into my aunt, and the three of us stood there and chit-chatted for a while. I had been feeling generally uneasy around this time because I had recently been binge-watching a lot of YouTube videos about true crime and creepy encounters. I was having trouble sleeping, and I had been getting scared when I was home alone and heard the tiniest noises. Due to this uneasiness, or paranoia I guess, I was very alert and on edge in the bakery at my grocery store. I stood with my back to the bagels and kept an eye on everyone walking past me as my mom and aunt had shared stories. Nobody seemed suspicious until I caught the eye of a prematurely balding man. He looked like your average mid-30s brawny neckbeard kind of guy. I remember thinking to myself, God, he's kind of creepy looking, isn't he? As he walked through the produce section into the bakery, but then I started to feel bad. Chill out. You're just being way too judgmental, I told myself, going so far as to even smile at him out of sheer guilt. He's probably staring at you because you're staring at him. He's just glancing on his way by. He's going to forget about you the second that he takes his eyes off of you, right? Wrong. I completely forgot about this experience for a few blissful, ignorant months. Then in January, I received a message request from an old friend that I'd lost touch with. My long-lost friend was the first of many to reach out, saying that there was a lot of buzz on the Facebook about a local sex offender who had been taking pictures of young women with their hair that he deemed pretty, some in their early 20s like me, some well below the age of 18, and posting them on a picture-sharing site. I don't know exactly how, but his online album stocked with, and I'm not exaggerating, thousands of these pictures. They had been found, and a bunch of screenshots were being plastered all over Facebook to raise awareness. My old friend saw a few pictures of me, standing against the bagels, flanked by my mother and my aunt, my long hair hanging down in post-French braid waves. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the screenshots. I told my family about what I'd just found out. My brother immediately called the police to report it. As he was talking to an officer, I received more screenshots. This time of the creep's sex offender registry page. He was the man from the grocery store, the man that I was initially unnerved by, the man that I felt guilty about, the man that I had smiled at. When my brother got off the phone with the police, he told us that they had been flooded with reports all night. While sympathetic, the policeman that my brother had spoke with said that there was nothing that they could do, as the creep was legally within his rights to take those pictures of us out in public. The man was supposedly assaulted right outside of a convenience store the night that his pictures were discovered, before he even realized he had been exposed, and he has since then been arrested for possession of child porn in an unrelated case. Funny thing is, my brother had actually been aware of this guy long before, as he was apparently infamous on the net for being a sketchy white dude who was obsessed with Asian women, had a hair fetish, and oh yeah, was a convicted sex offender. This happened last year when I, who happens to be female and 24 years old, was visiting my mother. My neighborhood is known for being safe, or at least that's what my family thought. We've got problems with neighbors on both sides of the house. We live in a small town that has been growing due to the university that was built in here. My mom lives across the street from the university because she teaches there. Our house has 2 floors, and my room is on the second. The window is right in front of our house, so you can see the street from it. Every night from around midnight, when I start to go to sleep, I heard dogs barking and growling. Whenever I would go to the window to see why they are barking, I couldn't see anything. There is a lot of trees and bushes in front of my house, so maybe that was making whatever they were barking at hiding there. This went for at least a week, and it was always at midnight. This night I was having trouble sleeping, so I was video chatting with my boyfriend. At midnight, my dogs were barking like crazy. I was sitting right in front of my window and couldn't see anything unusual, but I felt a weird vibe, like I was about to discover what was happening on my front yard and scaring my dogs. I turn off the lights and stay still, watching the streets in a placement that who was outside couldn't see me. My boyfriend was still chatting with me, saying that maybe it was a fox or a raccoon because there's a lot of wildlife around where my mom lives, but I knew that it wasn't an animal. I stayed there for a long time. My boyfriend went to sleep, and I kept looking out my window. It was about 1:30 when I see something moving from the bushes. It was a man wearing all black, crouched right behind the bushes. My body froze, and I didn't call my mom to see it. I've already told her about my dogs going crazy in our front yard at the same time every night. But like my boyfriend, she said maybe it was just an animal. So I was there looking at him, and he couldn't see me. He started moving, but he was still bent over so that no one could see him. But as I was on the second floor, I could see him just fine. He crawled with his back right next to our fence until he reached the neighbor's gate. Right inside that gate was a parked car. What happened next was really fast. He lit up a Molotov cocktail, tossed it in the car. That car went up in flames like crazy, and I finally called my mom to see what was happening. He ran like a feral cat, so fast down that street. My mom was calling the police, and then the firemen, but as they got there, the man was long gone. The next day, my mom got a call from the police officer that came the night before, telling her that they arrested the man that did that. He was trying to convince his ex-wife, who happened to be our neighbor, to get back with him. He said that he would make worse things happen if she didn't get back with him. After that, she moved out in a week. We never really talked to her, so I don't know any more details. I'm happy that he got arrested. I'm sad I only managed to do something after he set her car on fire. This took place my sophomore year of high school. I was a 15-year-old girl, young for my grade. It was a Wednesday in the winter. I joined the honor society at my school. Besides meeting and talking about how to help my community, we also had to meet at 7:20 a.m., which was 25 minutes before school started. Since I wasn't a morning person, missing more time to sleep was always frustrating. That's why I was always late, which on this day, I was running late. Being 15, I couldn't drive myself to school, so I had to have my grandmother do it, who lives with my mother and I. Take me to school, since at this time my mother would be in the bathroom, putting on makeup before work. My grandma opened the garage with the button on the garage wall. Both my grandmother and I got into her car, which was parked in the garage, of course. Once closing the door, she would pull out into the driveway. Now, she looked back towards the front windshield to pull out to the right, towards the street to pull out into our cul-de-sac, and I screamed to stop. She quickly slammed on the brakes. There was a man. He was about 6 foot tall, dirty blonde-looking hair, wearing all black. He was only illuminated by the headlights since on winter mornings it was pitch dark, and today it was raining outside. I noticed something in his hand. Being the observant person that I was, I thought that I saw a black handle. The man didn't look at us, explain himself, or wave a hand to say sorry. He just stopped in front of the lights for about 3 seconds, before continuing to walk through our yard towards our neighbor's house. We watched him disappear into the dark. I live in a neighborhood where we all know each other and watch out for each other. We all own about 1 acre of land. Recently, my neighbors have been having work done around their houses, with taking down some trees and fixing up their house. So my grandmother, with her heart of gold, continued driving as we discussed what just happened. She assumed that he was just a worker. I knew that he wasn't. I told her I thought that he had a knife, and she brushed it off, saying maybe it was a worker holding a dustpan or a shovel. He could have been just using our yard as a shortcut. But no, something told me that I had to warn my mother. So I was trying to text my mother, but no texts were sending. Nothing was going through. I texted lock the door, but when it went through, she didn't understand why. She questioned me saying, "What? Why?" At this point I called her, quickly explaining the situation and yelling at her to bolt the locked door. She did, and not a second later, he opened our screen door and tried to open our door handle. When it didn't work, he tried to kick the door down. My mother then called the police. I don't know how quickly they arrived, but we live in a small town, so I assume the response time was pretty fast. When the police arrived, she told them what happened. They write up a report. Later that morning, the man was found a couple of roads down. He tried to get into some other houses too, when he ended up getting into a house, and a man had chased him out with a shotgun. He was caught and arrested, found with a large butcher knife in his hand. Although this isn't an extreme story, it holds a lot of what-ifs. What if I hadn't been late to school? What if I hadn't gotten a hold of my mom? And the biggest one of all, what if I wasn't late and my grandmother would have asked him if he needed any help? I'm now a junior in high school. It's been about a year, but the effects of this encounter still haunt me. I'm afraid to be alone. I'll double-check or even triple-check my locks and listen intently to the sounds of my house when trying to go to sleep. If I hear something, I'll try to go check it out. He's made me pretty paranoid, but I guess my fears are rational. Who expects their own home to be the site of a creep encounter? I don't want to waste my time, so I'll just get to the point. It was warm on June 7th. We were out on some errands when we saw it. An old abandoned house with a for sale sign. I thought that we could use this house for a backup, as we already had trouble paying for our current house. I know, it's a horrible idea, but what choice do we have? Either risk paying overdue or buy a shitty, also very cheap house. Seemed like the smart thing to do. Well, as you'll soon find out, we regretted it. Within a month of buying it, we started going to the damn beast. From the second that we pushed open the frail, crumbling door, the worst possible smell came billowing from the floorboards. It was like an animal, no, 100 animals, died right in front of us and tore themselves apart. As we searched the area, my roommate Matt said jokingly, "Hey, you never know, Tom. There could have been a murder here." Big mistake. Big mistake. Because just after he said that, he opened a closet. What he was met with smelt worse than the entire house. As he opened it, a swarm of tiny little fuckers flied out and fled. Roaches, flies, and other winged insects made their way out through the chimney. He screamed like a little bitch for about an hour. At least it seemed like that, but it was only 3 seconds. Enough to make me deaf in one ear. I smiled and said, "Speak of the devil." He glared at me through his green eyes. We called the cops, but they just shook their heads. "Sorry, kid, but this body has been here for about 56 years. He turned to his comrade. "Tell Arambo we found the guy." Matt, still throwing up, finally had the strength to ask, "What guy?" "Marco Philly. He was missing years ago, from Connecticut. Never thought that he would end up here." "Connecticut? We're in Washington. How does that even happen?" "If only—" "Hey, Sarge, take a look at this." The call came from upstairs. The officer frowned and proceeded to walk up the flight of stairs to the next room. We followed. I wish we hadn't. Lying there on the floor of the upstairs bedroom were 55 rotten, torn up, decomposing bodies. "Woo, that's an eye load, isn't it, Cooper?" "Why is there 55? "I don't know." He grabbed his radio and peeped into it. "Madison, any files on 5543 Arlen Avenue?" We heard a squawk in return. "Let me get that for you." We waited for about 30 seconds. "Sarge, get the fuck out of here." "Why?" "There's a murderer lurking in that house. He'll—" The police immediately pulled out their guns. I had no clue what was going on. They searched the house, keeping us in between them as we couldn't be left unguarded. They searched the whole house. We left, and they made us stay at the police station. It wasn't for about 3 days that they got the bastard. He was caught when he tried bringing a butcher knife into the home. Then the police surrounded him. He went through a tunnel and escaped right into the hands of the cops. He wouldn't give up and swung at a cop. They blew him to bits. But just thinking about it, we could have been his next victim. We were actually scheduled to meet him the day that he was caught. If we didn't, we would be dead as well. Ever since I was a young boy, I've always been different. Not psychotic, demonic, or anything like that. Just not like the rest. I look different, and I act different. I dress different. I think differently. This made it easy for beautiful people of the world to mess with me. A lot. It used to bother me growing up, but as I've gotten older, not so much. Now I just look at the source and think, screw them, they'll be dead soon anyways. I've never been too lucky with the ladies either. So after years of failed relationships, I found myself alone, friendless, and living in a 20-year-old trailer that I'm renting with a friend of a friend. It doesn't really matter who. Anyways, I thought to myself, I'm tired of being alone. I can probably get another girlfriend, but she'd just get on my nerves, and then we would break up. Same old song and dance. No, this time I want a companion. Someone who would be happy to see me when I come home from work. Someone who likes to go for walks. Someone to ride shotgun in the car. Someone who will love me for who I am, not for what I have to offer them. I'm going to get a dog. The very next day, I got up, hopped in my car, and drove to the local ASPCA to get myself a dog. I walked in, told the lady behind the desk when I was looking for. Nothing big, a small dog, maybe a lap dog, so to speak. She said, sure, right this way. She took me into the kennel area and showed me many types of little dogs. Many pinchers, chihuahuas, even a few Pomeranians. They were all lovely dogs, but none of them really seemed to click with me. Then out of the corner of my eye, at the very end of the cages, all by itself, sat a metal box. The box was fully enclosed, with a tiny barred window in the door, resembling a prison cell. I said to the lady, "What is that?" She looked at me as if I wasn't supposed to ask and said, "That's Roscoe. We're not really sure what kind of dog he is. He's been returned to us several times due to behavioral issues. He's scheduled to be put down later today. That's why he's in that box." "I'd sure like to see him," I said. She said, "I don't think that's a good idea," starting to get annoyed with me. I then told her that the sign out front says all dogs ready for adoption. He's in here. He can be adopted. Now I want to see him. She told me, "Yes, sir, but you're going to regret it." Took me over to the box, unlocked the door, and opened it, and then I saw him. This little guy looked rough. His brown fur was matted to his body, crusty pieces of I don't know what in the corner of his eyes, like he'd been crying. His nails were a bit long and sharp. His eyes were jet black with the slightest hint of red in them. To be quite honest, he looked like he just crawled out of the sewer, and smelled like it too. He had an odor that reminded me of the summers I spent helping my uncle at his funeral home. He smelled like death, but he was friendly. He ran out of the box, ran up to me, let me pick him up, licked my face for what had been at least 10 minutes. He was wagging his tail and just going crazy with excitement, and so was I. I told the lady, "This little guy ain't dying today. Roscoe has a new home." A look of worry fell over her face. After filling out some paperwork and getting his dog license, I took Roscoe home. First on the agenda was a bath. He was rather calm in the bath. He seemed to enjoy it really well. After that, I dried him off, then brushed him off. I had to use one of my old brushes, since I didn't have a dog brush. We went to the local pet store next. I won't mention the name of the place due to legal matters. I'll just say the people there are smart about pets. We get all the necessities needed to take care of my new friend. The drive home started out normal, just driving down the road. I've always been a cautious driver, always doing the speed limit or below. Apparently the guy in the car behind me didn't like it and sped up to pass me. Everyone usually does. He pulled alongside of me and yelled, "Get the hell out of my way, moron. Learn how to drive." Roscoe went crazy, barking and jumping at the dash as the guy passed by, growling and showing all of his teeth, drooling and clawing the dashboard. The red tint in his eyes was becoming more apparent now. He began banging his head against the windshield in a crazed attempt to get at the guy, hitting it so hard that it split his forehead open, blood running down his face and the windshield and the dash. Oh my God, what the hell is happening? Roscoe, just calm down. Stop! I finally had to pull to the side of the road. Roscoe was still frantic. I threw an old shirt over him so he didn't see and grabbed him. I told him that it was okay over and over again. His body went limp. I thought that he was dead. I pulled the shirt from over him, and the second I did, his eyes had opened, and he was wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to play, like nothing ever happened. What the hell? I took the shirt and held it over his forehead, stopping the blood. I washed him up fully when we got home, cleaning the dashboard and windshield as well. We spent the rest of the day playing in the yard and hanging around the house so that we could get used to his new home. The trailer park that I live in isn't the best place to live. The lot rent is cheap, but that's the only good thing about it. It's a dirt road in a U-shape with trailers running parallel with the road on both sides. This is apparently where the term trailer trash came from. It's not that the people are bad or anything. It's just cleanliness isn't their way of life. Old refrigerators, car parts, and various other piles of junk cluttered their yard. The trailer at the end, in front of the park, had been raided a couple of times by local police. There's always cars pulling in and out of there. I think that they're selling drugs, but that's none of my business. In the middle of the park is what the park manager calls a playground. It consists of an old beat-up swing set, rickety metal slide, and a sandbox that most of the cats around here use as a litter box. Most of the older folks here just sit out there and talk all day. No kids ever play. Who can blame them? It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. The night I realized Roscoe was the perfect friend for me came about 2 months later. That night, while taking him for a walk around the park before going to bed, we passed the old playground. Something told me not to cut through there, just complete the circle around the park and go home. But it was close to my house, and I was really tired. At the playground, there were two guys that I'd never seen before, in black hoodies, just hanging out. One on the swing and the other on the slide. As I passed them, I heard the guy on the swing say, "Nice dog. Can I pet him?" I said sure. As the one guy bent down to pet Roscoe, I heard the cocking of a gun and felt the barrel press hard against the back of my neck. "Give me your freaking money or you're dead." The guy from the slide, who now had a gun, said. The other guy leaped up and grabbed me and slammed me against the slide, dropping the leash in the process. What happened next sent shivers down my spine and filled me with excitement at the same time. Roscoe went insane. His eyes turned bright red, skipping and growling and clawing part, and went straight for the guy's neck. He leapt up from a sitting position, grabbed the guy's throat, digging his claws into the side of his neck and ripping out his voice box with his teeth, blood spewing everywhere as the guy fell to the ground. Roscoe was still attached. The guy with the gun ran like a bitch, and the guy on the ground was gasping for air, blood pouring out of his mouth, and the hole in his throat as he choked on it. He tried to hit Roscoe to get him off, but the boy was relentless, biting and clawing at the guy's face, ripping and tearing his eyes out. Part of his cheek and his entire nose went to the socket. Maybe I'm wrong for this, but I really don't care. After years of being messed with by assholes like this, it was great to finally get some revenge. I started chanting Roscoe on, "Get him, boy! Get him! Kill that piece of shit!" And that's just what he did. As the guy took his last breath, Roscoe stepped back and fell over. His body was limp and lifeless, blood covering his snout, with pieces of flesh and eyeballs hanging from his mouth. 2 seconds later, he sprung back to life, happy and energetic, chewing on the eyeball pieces like a play toy. "Good boy, Roscoe," I said, as I picked him up, staring at the mutilated corpse that lay at my feet, and smiled, "Screw him. Let the cats eat the rest." I carried Roscoe home, washed him off, and fed him the biggest steak that I had. Raw, of course, just how he likes it. I had the best night's sleep that I've ever had that night. Roscoe by my side. Homicide detectives and police flooded the park the day after, going door to door looking for witnesses as to what happened. Mrs. Jacobson, from 3 trailers down, found the body. She had to be given oxygen and a ride in the ambulance to be checked out. It traumatized her so bad. When the cops came to my door, I of course saw nothing, and Roscoe was on his best behavior, laying on the living room floor, pretending to be asleep. I watched the coroner carry the body away. The cops finished up and went away. I asked my neighbors what had happened. She said some guy was mauled to death last night. The cops think that it was some kind of wild animal that escaped from the circus that came through about a year ago, and then attacked the guy. There have been numerous bodies found in the area with wounds such as the ones that they found today. They're writing it off as that. Roscoe and I couldn't be happier together. He is in a loving home, and I get to seek revenge. So if any of you assholes from my past are reading this, I haven't forgotten. I'll find you. I will get you. Well, Roscoe will. He's not a bad dog. He's just very protective. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.